Welcome back. Well, as many as 202 participants in the South African COVID-19 vaccine trial have been vaccinated. Some participants tested positive for the virus and others have had to be excluded because they have underlying illnesses. Scientific coordinator for the Wits University's African Leadership in Vaccinology, Dr. Clare Cutland, says more participants need to be enrolled. She joins us now with more on these developments. Dr. Clare, thanks a lot for joining us this evening. Take us through some of your findings since you began the vaccination process.
Thank you, Faith, for having me. So the first vaccinations were administered to humans in South Africa on the 24th of June, which is just 2.5 weeks ago now. And since then, as you say, just over 200 participants have been enrolled and received one dose of the vaccine. So almost 500 participants have been screened, which means that they have attended the clinics and they have consented to trial participation. And they've had samples taken for to exclude them, looking at exclusion criteria. Some of the participants who have been excluded had undiagnosed hypertension or diabetes. Some of them are HIV infected. There's a small group of 50 participants who we will enroll who are HIV infected, but that will be a little bit later on in the trial.
And now we're talking here about another finding also, Doctor, and that is the case of those individuals that have tested positive for COVID-19. And what we're finding also is that many of them are actually asymptomatic.
That's correct. So of the first group of participants who were vaccinated, we have tested the nasal swabs which were collected on the day of vaccination. This is a routine protocol procedure that is done, where we do a nasal swab on the participants on the day of vaccination, just before they receive the vaccine. And of those participants, almost 20% of them were found to be positive for the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which means that they have COVID-19 infection. However, all of them were healthy and well, totally asymptomatic.
I mean, it looks as though we have not as yet grasped exactly how extensive this COVID-19 infection rate is amongst community members, that we may actually be having conservative numbers when it comes to being able to tell the true form of the reality on the ground.
That's correct. So it has been found globally that there is quite extensive asymptomatic disease where people have either very mild or no symptoms at all. We did not realize how extensive this would be in the population. At the moment, we are only recruiting from 3 sites based in Gauteng. And as you know, Gauteng has now become the epicenter. So it's only over the past few weeks that our numbers have really skyrocketed. Yeah. And we're beginning to see now that there is a lot of asymptomatic carriage, which we did not anticipate.
Well, we're talking about asymptomatic cases on one front, but unfortunately on the other front, doctors, the issue around those with underlying conditions, those with certain comorbidities, whether it's hypertension, diabetes, you name it. Were you expecting this high number of people with such comorbidities existing? I mean, a fifth of the participants actually have got underlying, either illnesses or diseases and have had to such be excluded from participating in this trial.
In this trial, we are enrolling adults who are between 18 and 65 years of age. So once adults are over about 45 or 50, many of them do have underlying comorbidities, including hypertension or diabetes. And there is not very, very good screening that is ongoing to pick up these chronic diseases, which are often asymptomatic until fairly late in the disease. Some of the participants some of the volunteers that we excluded, that we've had to exclude, were obese, and this is one of the exclusion criteria for the trial.
And on the other side of it, I mean, you're looking at enrolling more participants. So let's talk a little bit there about that process. How is it going, and how many individuals then will you need? Since you're saying that about a fifth of them will have to be excluded from participating, so how many more individuals would you need to enroll?
So what we've had to do is, over the last week, we have had a protocol amendment which has been reviewed and approved by SAPRA and the ethics committees. and this was implemented just this last week on Wednesday. In order to ensure that we have adequate numbers of participants who have not had coronavirus disease prior to enrollment in the trial, we have changed our screening strategy. So what we're doing is we are taking a swab, from nasal swab, and blood from the participants during the screening process, which was not part of our original protocol. And only if the participants are negative on both the swab and the blood, which indicates that they do not have current or have had previous infection with SARS-CoV-2, will we enroll them in the trial. That has been implemented on Wednesday this past week. What we have had to do is rescreen the participants who had been screened prior to that but not vaccinated. They signed an updated consent form informing them as to why we needed to now do these swabs and bloods to look for SARS-CoV-2 disease in them, and they've had these swabs and their blood done. They will be coming back from next week for vaccinations as well. So we're trying to ensure that we do not enroll people who have had previous disease into this trial.
Yeah.
We've had to improve our sample size by 20. We will be enrolling, instead of 2,000 as I initially planned, we will be enrolling 2,020 participants.
Dr. Clare Cutland, we're going to have to leave it there for this afternoon, but thanks a lot for joining us, shedding some light in terms of that progress of that vaccine trial.